I had a choice because I've been doing for the last 6 years, I've been using the sleep program as part of an overall program called Being the Best Learner You Can Be, which is based on neuroscience and cognitive psychology. And I've been doing that in 4 schools that are primary schools. So I've been doing this in 3 of them have preschools attached, so it's preschool to year 7 right across. And also what I did is to start a PhD. And last, I shouldn't laugh like that, should I?
That was a good idea anyway.
Yeah, it has its moments. To try and evaluate the program, and so what I did to evaluate the program was to choose the year level 4/5s, because they haven't quite had the devastating reconfiguration that occurs in your adolescence, and they were mostly literate, so they could fill out the questionnaires and things that I wanted. And so I ran that last year. So I tossed up whether I should show you some of the data from that study or whether I should just talk to you about the teaching of sleep in school as part of the rest of it, and I'm going to go with B. So what I'll do is some of this I'll slip through very close. Okay, so I work in 4 schools. They're called the Neuroscience in the Classroom Cluster. They're in the inner northeast metropolitan area. And we were talking about socioeconomic. 2 of those schools are what we call Category 2 schools. So the lower the number, the more socioeconomic need that they have. So Category 2 is quite low. 1 is a 4 and 1 is a 5. And what we found is a number of things. What I do is I introduce the sleep program that Sarah presented. I started out using it in year 4 because that's when it was set up for, but I've spread it out so that the kids in the earlier start to get some idea, and we use the sleep diary and we integrate it into the curriculum. And so what I'm going to do is not speak so much to this, but sort of jump through to some of the pictures. So what we've done is to take the sleep diary and we use it with the kids, but we also use it with some of the teachers, because my background for a long time was in behaviour and behavioural change. And teachers have been trained over many decades to think, and it's in the school policies still, that people choose the behaviours that they use. And very much that's one of the things from the neuroscience program, which is many of our behaviours occur before we've actually got to the point of thinking about them, because they're patterned responses. And those patterned responses are built for lots and lots of reasons. And so one of the things about sleep is if you're not getting enough of it, you're much more reactive than you are cognitive. So you're going to get a lot more reaction, you're going to get a lot more patterned responses. You're not going to get the something occurs to you, stop and respond. You're going to get something occurs to you and respond. Does that make sort of sense? So not only are we doing the sleep program with the kids, we're doing it with the whole school, with the teachers as well, to trying to shift their mindset that behaviour is a choice, that behaviour is a reaction to what's here and now. Behaviour is also a function of how much sleep you have or haven't got, how many other emotional factors are involved, how well you've learned to integrate your cognitive and your emotional systems, because they're different systems. So it's the whole neuroscience thing. And so often when we have a kid who's got issues, what we do in these 4 schools now is, before we start going, well, what are the things that are happening, what is happening at home, we go, let's look at the sleep. Let's see if that's a component at all. What we do is we also try to build an awareness for each individual student, because the students at the end are they have to be with themselves all the time, and you're not always with them. So, wherever you go, there you are. So what you want to do is get the students to have those abilities themselves. So what I'm showing you now are 2 slides in terms of the quality of sleep. So we get the kids to do the sleep diary that's in the ACES program. And then we load it up on the Excel spreadsheet, and we go, okay, let's look at how long you've been in bed and how tired you were. And what we found in doing this is that we often get kids who will be in bed for an amount of time and it looks pretty good. And this one's not too bad. And so what we wanted, the two lines as far away as possible, and the kids can understand that this one's doesn't look too bad to start with, but then you look, this is a year 3 student who's getting slightly over 8 hours, and he's mostly tired all the time. So we went, okay, so Lawrence, one of the things we're going to try for you is what happens if we add 15 or 20 minutes and we come back and we look in 6 weeks and see what happens. And so we just set that little target. What we also get sometimes is something like this, and in this particular sleep diary, this was the weekend. Okay, so one of the main things about the program is that from the neuroscience point of view, everybody's brain is different. We all have the same basic needs, but everyone's brain is different. So not everybody needs exactly the same amount of sleep. So what we have to do is find out what works for you. I'm a person that needs lots of sleep. If I don't get lots of sleep, I do not function, quite literally. I do not function. It's very sad. I was a desperate failure at sleepover slumber parties. Terrible. We won't go there. But anyway, we look at this and we get that sort of pattern, and we talk to the kids about what it means. I don't think I put one up, but sometimes we get one where the kids have had 11 hours, they've been in bed, 11 hours, and we're still getting really tired. And we go, okay, what's happening? And what we find is they're in bed for the amount of time, but there's a number of disturbances that are occurring so that they're not actually sleeping the whole time that they're in bed. So some of them have significant recurring nightmares. Some of them have new babies. Some of them have animals. Some of them live in houses that are chaotic. Some of them live on houses that are right on the corner of very main roads. And so there are disturbances. And so you start to unpack some of those things that are going on. Some of them have parents who, when their younger brothers and sisters wake up, they say, go and sleep with your sibling. So there's a lot of things. And so when we find those things out, then we're in a position that we can actually address some of that. So what I'm presenting to you is not so much from the research point of view where you're looking at the big. I'm going the other way, which is what I worked in special ed for many years, and one of the real problems was the difference between a therapist's approach who's looking at just that one student and a teacher's approach who has to take the whole. So this is the opposite now. We're looking at what you're telling us and we're trying to individualize it. Okay, what also is useful is that in doing this at this stage in the schooling, kids are learning how to read and interpret graphs and charts, and so we can pull that into the information too. Okay, so one of the underlying things about the being the best learner you can be program is the concept that patterns are really important, and patterns are not red, green, blue, red, green, blue. They're also behavioural patterns, they're thought patterns, they're all the things that you do, sleep patterns. And so it feeds into the sorts of things that happen in the hour before you go to sleep, so the sleep hygiene stuff. And this is the sleep hygiene data that has been put into individual kids' patterns, which they love to see. But then what we do is we have a look at the patterns, and we know that some things are useful and some things are not useful in helping you to fall asleep easily. And so we have a chance to teach those. So what are the sleep positives? Things that are going to help you make melatonin, or at least not inhibited. Music, as long as it's not heavy metal, all of those sorts of things. And the things that are going to make it harder for you to go to sleep in that hour before you want to go to sleep: computer, exercise, TV. So it gives us a chance to do it. And the kids look at their patterns, and they're very interested in themselves. And you make the best memories when it's about you. Quite literally, you make the best memories when it's about you. So this is a collection of 4 from a year 4 or 5 class that were in my study last year. So they're all in the same class, but you can see that they all have quite a different sort of pattern. And one of the things that I'm going to do sometime is make a connection between their patterns and all of the other data that I've got on them. So I've got their academics, I've got their teacher profiles, I've got their behaviour, I've got their computerised attention and working memory tests and all that sort of stuff, and somehow along the line I'm going to put all this together. I'm trying not to think about it because it's upsetting my sleep at the moment, but I'm going to become very good friends with the statistician, I think. So what's really interesting is they love looking at it, and the teachers, more importantly, find it fascinating to look at these patterns in relation to what they know about their kids. And they often anecdotally tell me stuff about, well, that makes a lot of sense. What we also know is that if you see something repeatedly, it actually sinks into your brain a lot more than if someone just talks at you. So there's a lot of supporting materials, and this is a poster that we've made that just supports that whole idea. These are some useful websites that I've used that augment the teaching. The first one is, of course, Sarah's new one. Sleep for Kids, for the primary school kids, is a really good one. That's where it's aimed, but it's really clear and really sets things out very nicely. The BBC one is aimed at adults, but there's a lot of stuff on it that the kids relate to, and it's got this wonderful game called Sheep Dash, and it's a reaction game, very quick. It's a quick reaction game, and basically it gives you the chance to say to them that if you don't get enough sleep, it slows your reactions down, and it's a very useful way of making those points. Sleep Foundation one you've got. This one, Faculty Washington Tudler, is actually a website called Neuroscience for Kids, and if you're a science teacher, it's a great website at whatever level, because he's got all sorts of neuroscience stuff, all sorts of science, brain, biology, but he's got a whole big section on sleep as well. And he's got a wonderful icon that has a baby's eye doing REM movement, which the kids just go, ah, but then they understand what you're talking about. And he's got really a lot of resources there. And the sleep problems. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time going on from the last conference that we had about if you're going to get, and backing up what you've said very much, if you're going to try and get this into education, you have to speak educationese. You've got to talk to teachers in their language. And we are very stressed. We have lots and lots of things happening to us whenever in teacher, I won't say it's mythology, but in teacher culture, people will often say, anytime the government comes up with a new idea, the people that they look to roll it out are teachers in classrooms. And there is a sense that we can't be everything to all people. And so there is a natural reaction to go, whoa, because ACARA has really, the new Australian curriculum has really stressed a lot of people. The way they rolled it out caused a lot of people to become very insecure in their professional ability, which it shouldn't have occurred, but that's what has happened. So anyway, ACARA now has the new Australian curriculum has what's called general capabilities, and this is the core of what we need to teach. But sleep actually, the whole concept of that fits in with a lot of those things. There's a lot of places you can put it in. In the concept of being the best learner you can be, what we try and teach the kids is you need to have the very best patterns that you can establish very early so that you can access, so you can do the best learning you can. And that relates to understanding about how you make memories, that relates to understanding about attention and attention systems, how you improve that, how you self-regulate your emotional development and getting your emotions and your cognition to be able to work together, because that doesn't just happen. You have to put some effort into that. It relates to building all of what we call executive function skills. So all of those things that you need to be able to set a goal and reach that goal. And so that's what we teach. And sleep is very much part of that, because you can do all the best planning in the world, and if you can't stay awake to do it, you're in trouble. But what the kids also are surprised about is how it affects their performance in terms of sport, how it affects their ability to regulate their emotions. They're absolutely fascinated by the mechanics of it, that in terms of when you do most of your growing, is when you're asleep, when your body repairs itself. It's when all of that stuff that's on the Sleep for Kids really nicely set out.
Do they care about sleep phases?
Yeah, they do. And they're absolutely fascinated about sleep phases. They're absolutely fascinated about things like sleep talking and sleepwalking, and dreams and nightmares. And the number of kids that I'm working with at the moment who have nightmares more often than you would expect, who have recurrent nightmares, and who wake up 5 or 6 or 7 times a night that they're aware of. That have really disturbed sort of sleep, and they've had the concept that I can't do anything about it, and in the same way that they've had the concept that I can't do anything about it if I think I'm a bad student, which is the whole focus of the neuroscience program, which is, in fact, there are things you can do to become better at all sorts of things. But what people tend to do is when you perceive that you're not good at something, you avoid it. So you don't make yourself any better at it. You get worse at it because you find all sorts of ways around it. And so it's underlying concept of all of that, of trying to make yourself better, and if something's not working, finding the way to make it better. And so one of the things I spent a lot of time doing was going through the stuff that you can do to maybe improve things for your sleep, around your hygiene, but deal with recurrent nightmares. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do around that. And a lot of it's about patterning. So it's about patterning before you go to sleep, because when you're asleep there's a disconnect between your reasoning, your logical thinking. And they're actually fascinated by that, because they relate to it because they experience it all the time.